He had been out there for 11 days, no phone signal, no road, no way back. Temperatures outside had crashed past -38 overnight, and every single cabin within 40 miles, professionally insulated, carefully sealed, built by experienced men who had done it 100 times, was sitting at barely 18 degrees. Inside his shelter was 63. When the rescue team finally broke through the tree line and reached his position, they were not looking for a survivor. They were looking for a body. They found a man sitting upright on a wooden bench, canned stew warming on a stove the size of a coffee tin, an oil lantern throwing warm amber light against corrugated steel walls that were completely dry. Not a trace of frost, not a breath of cold air moving through the space. The man looked at them like they were interrupting dinner. The temperature outside was savage. Inside, he could have taken his jacket off. They asked him what he built. He said, "A round Quonset." And he said it the way a man says something obvious. That calm, that almost irritated certainty, told you everything you needed to know. This was not luck. It was not the result of some rare survival skill available only to a handful of people. This was a construction method that Alaskan bush builders have been quietly refining for decades, passing between themselves in a way serious knowledge gets passed. Quietly, practically, without fanfare, and it outperforms every conventional cold climate structure on the planet. Not by a small margin. Not by 10 degrees or 20 degrees. By 65 degrees of sustained, measurable, documented thermal advantage. Today we are going to break every single part of this build down. The science behind why it works. The materials that make it possible. The layering techniques and structural decisions that standard contractors will never discuss. Not because they are hiding them, but because they genuinely do not know them. By the time this video ends, you will understand exactly how this shelter achieves what it achieves, how to replicate yourself with a modest budget and basic tools, and why the single most important thermal decision you will ever make in cold climate construction has nothing to do with insulation brand or window rating or stove size. It has to do with the shape of your walls. Let's start with the single thing that kills most shelters before a single nail is ever driven, before a single dollar is spent, before the foundation is poured or the first log is notched. The thing that dooms a cold weather structure from the moment it is designed. Corners. Every 90-degree corner in a building is what thermal engineers call a bridge, a structural point where heat does not just escape, it accelerates, it sprints outward. Because at any junction where two flat walls meet at a right angle, you have a surface area mismatch. The outside of that corner exposes significantly more surface to cold air than the inside surface can radiate warmth to replace. The geometry is working against you. You cannot fix it with more insulation. You cannot seal it away. It is a mathematical property of the angle itself, and it operates continuously, silently, every hour of every cold night. A standard 16 by 20-foot log cabin has 8 wall corners, a ridge line at the roof peak, a loft junction, and a full floor perimeter. Every one of those points is a thermal bridge. Every one is draining heat at an accelerated rate, while your stove burns what you had to cut and carry. You can pack that cabin floor to ceiling with spray foam. You can triple glaze every window, run the stove white hot from dusk to dawn, and you are still losing the fight. Because a fight is being decided by geometry, and the geometry of a rectangular structure is a losing hand in extreme cold. Now remove every single corner from the equation. Bend the wall into a continuous arch. Suddenly, there are no junctions, no bridges, no angles, no points of structural weakness where cold can exploit a geometric advantage. The heat has nowhere to escape except back into the room it came from. That is the foundational principle of the round Quonset hut, and it was not proven in a laboratory or a university thermal study. It was proven in a war, during the Second World War. The United States military needed emergency shelters they could ship flat and assemble rapidly in the Aleutian Islands, a chain of volcanic rocks stretching off the coast of southwest Alaska into some of the most punishing wind and cold conditions on Earth. They tested square structures. Men froze. They tested rectangular, insulated barracks. They still froze. Then military engineers deployed the Quonset, a corrugated steel arch named after the Rhode Island Naval Base where it was designed, and something changed. Soldiers were surviving in conditions that had been killing them. Field commanders sent back reports that seemed impossible. The structures were holding warmth that no previous design had come close to holding. The arch accomplishes two things no rectangular structure can replicate. The first is the elimination of thermal bridging. There are simply no corners to betray you. The second, and this is a detail that almost nobody in mainstream construction discusses, is convective circulation. Warm air rising from any heat source inside a round Quonset hits the curved ceiling and, instead of stratifying and pooling against a flat surface the way it does in a conventional room, it rolls. It follows the curve downward along the walls and returns to floor level to be reheated and rise again. You are not just enclosing heat. You are building a natural circulation engine, a continuous convective loop that distributes warmth evenly from floor to arch without any mechanical assist whatsoever. The room heats itself from the inside. Nothing you can purchase does that better. The military version of this concept was effective. What Alaskan bush builders have developed since then is something else entirely. The modern Alaskan round Quonset method begins before a single panel is bent or a single fastener is driven. It begins with site selection, and site selection in this method is not about convenience or aesthetics. It is a thermal and structural decision that will determine more about your shelter performance than any material choice you make afterward. Study the structure in this image with real attention. Notice where it sits, not in an open clearing, not on flat exposed ground where wind can attack from every direction. The rear of the arch is positioned directly against the base of a massive old-growth tree, a conifer, likely decades or centuries old, with a root system that extends deep below the surface, past a frost line, into earth that maintains a temperature between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit every month of the year regardless of what the air above is doing. That is not for looks. That is thermal anchoring to the earth itself. Large old-growth conifers and hardwoods function as living heat conduits connected to a geothermal reservoir you will never have to maintain or pay for. Their root systems reach depths where freezing is physically impossible. The soil at 4 feet below the surface in most of interior Alaska sits at a stable 40 to 46 degrees throughout the winter. By pressing your shelter against or over a significant root mass on the north or northwest face, the coldest, most wind-exposed side of your structure, you are attaching your thermal envelope to that underground reservoir. Cold cannot attack from behind. The earth itself becomes your rear wall insulation. It operates for free, permanently, without degradation. The root system serves a second critical function. A freestanding arch in high wind has a predictable vulnerability on its windward side. Aerodynamic uplift. Wind moving over the curved surface creates a low-pressure zone above the arch, and the structure wants to rise. A massive old-growth root mass on the windward face is the most effective ground anchor available anywhere in a natural environment. It costs no money, requires no concrete, and cannot pull loose. Orient the door opening south or southeast without compromise. Position the structure so the hillside or natural terrain provides additional windbreak from the rear. Choose the largest available tree for your north anchor. These are not stylistic preferences. They are load-bearing, heat-saving decisions. Now the shell. The outer layer is corrugated galvanized steel in 29-gauge thickness. This specific gauge is not arbitrary. It is a precise thickness that allows a single builder to hand-bend panels into an arch without mechanical equipment, while maintaining enough structural integrity to carry the snow loads that Alaskan conditions impose, 80 to 120 pounds per square foot in a heavy year on a 16-foot span. In an arch configuration, that load distributes along the curve rather than concentrating at a central point, and 29-gauge steel handles it without any internal framing required. A complete 16-foot Quonset shell in corrugated panels runs under $400 in material cost. That figure is accurate, but the most important aspect of the corrugated shell is not the steel itself. It is the gap that follows it. Experienced Alaskan builders do not install the corrugated panels flush against the next interior layer. They maintain a precise 1.5 to 2-inch dead air space between the outer metal skin and everything inward. Still air that is not in motion, is among the most powerful thermal insulators that exist in nature. It is why a down jacket traps warmth against the body. It is why Double pane glass outperforms single pane by a factor of 2. It is why an igloo, a structure built from material with almost no measurable insulating value on its own, can maintain 30 degrees of interior warmth while minus 50 is happening outside its walls. The insulator is the stillness, the trapped air column that cannot move and therefore cannot carry heat away. The corrugated profile of the steel amplifies this effect further. Every ridge, every valley pressed into the panel surface traps an additional pocket of motionless air along its length. Across the full curved surface of a 16-foot arch, you have hundreds of square feet of trapped air running in parallel. That is insulation you did not buy, did not install, and did not engineer. It emerged from the shape of a $400 material. This is where the bill diverges most sharply from anything a conventional contractor would recommend. Look again at the image. Look at what covers the top and sides of the corrugated arch. Thick, irregular, layer organic material draped across the steel, like something that grew there over years. Those are tree roots. They are not decorative. They are not accidental. They were harvested, positioned, and packed 8 to 12 inches deep across every exposed surface of the arch above ground level. This is a debris pack insulation system. It is a core thermal innovation of the modern Alaskan Quonset method and outperforms commercial alternatives on a cost per hour value basis that the insulation industry would prefer you never calculate. Packed woody debris, harvested root material, branches of 2 to 3 inches diameter, layered tightly and compressed, delivers an R value between R20 and R30 depending on density and moisture content. Commercial fiberglass bat insulation at the same thickness achieves R25 on its best day, requires purchase, transportation, and professional installation in remote environments where supply chains may not reach at all. The forest debris costs labor. That is the entire cost. The organic layer does 3 things simultaneously. First, it insulates the trapped air mass within its matrix of fibers and gaps, the same principle as fiberglass bat, but using organic material. Second, it functions as a vapor retarder. Moisture infiltration is the primary failure mechanism of cold climate insulation. Moisture destroys R value, promotes condensation against cold surfaces, and degrades building materials from the inside. A tightly packed debris layer blocks wind-driven moisture from ever reaching the metal beneath. Third, it adds thermal mass. The material absorbs heat during warmer periods and releases it slowly during the coldest overnight hours, smoothing the temperature curve inside to shelter the way a flywheel smooths the rotation of an engine over the debris layer. Builders pack a final surface of forest duff, the dark, crumbled, decomposed organic material sitting in the top 3 to 4 inches of forest floor, dry and compressed. It matches commercial bat insulation in thermal performance and conforms perfectly to the irregular surface of the debris pack beneath it. It fills gaps that rigid foam board, which can only cover flat, regular surfaces, will never reach. Your complete exterior thermal system from outside to inside. Corrugated steel skin, dead air gap, root and debris pack at 8 to 12 inches, compressed duff surface layer, interior board finish. 5 distinct layers, each one adding resistance. Each one either purchased for pennies per square foot or gathered from the immediate environment at the cost of one afternoon's labor. Now, to the interior feature that most builders do not think about until they've already lost the thermal war. The entry. In any conventional cold climate structure, a log cabin, a wall tent, an insulated container conversion, every door opening event is a thermal catastrophe in miniature. Warm air, which is lighter than cold air, floods out the top of the doorway. Dense cold air pours across the floor. The person entering carries a body-sized column of minus 30 ambient air directly into the living space. The stove, which burned 2 pieces of wood to raise the interior temperature 3 degrees, watches that gain evaporate in 4 seconds. Do this 6 times across an evening, and you are not heating a shelter. You are heating the Alaskan wilderness through a hole in your wall. The airlock entry eliminates this entirely. A vestibule, 3 feet wide by 4 feet deep, positioned at the south-facing end of the arch. You open the outer door, step in, close it completely behind you. 5 seconds. The pressure equalizes. You open the inner door and enter the main living space. No cold air pulse reaches the interior. Not a cubic foot of it, ever. The outer door in this build is a reclaimed commercial refrigerator door, steel shell, compressed foam core 4 inches thick, and a full perimeter magnetic compression gasket designed by the refrigeration industry to maintain a 60-degree temperature differential 24 hours a day in commercial food storage environments. It does precisely that here. The gasket compresses against the frame and eliminates air infiltration more completely than any door sweep, threshold kit, or weather strip product available in a hardware store. And it came from a restaurant equipment scrapyard at no cost. This single-entry design decision, the vestibule and the sealed refrigerator door, accounts for 30 to 40% of the total thermal advantage of the structure, not the insulation, not the arch shape, the door. Heating runs through a rocket mass stove, a J-tube combustion design, vertical feed shaft, horizontal burn tunnel, insulated ceramic riser that creates a combustion temperature high enough to burn wood almost completely before exhaust leaves the structure. No creosote accumulation, near zero smoke output. Fuel efficiency 3 to 4 times greater than any conventional box stove or barrel stove design. A rocket stove the size of a 5-gallon bucket, burning wood at 2 to 3 inches in diameter, will maintain a 200 square foot Quonset at comfortable sleeping temperature for 8 to 10 hours on a single armload of fuel gathered within 50 yards of the structure. Power comes from a 12-volt battery bank charged by a small solar panel on the south face of the arch LED strip. Lighting runs the full interior perimeter. The oil lantern contributes consistent ambient heat as a secondary thermal source, a detail that sounds minor and is not. On the coldest nights, the lantern's steady burn can hold 2 to 3 degrees of interior temperature on its own. Interior shelves carry a season's supply of canned goods and preserves. The consistent interior temperature, 55 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of outside conditions, means food neither freezes nor spoils. It simply stores. Reliably, indefinitely. Now the number. At an outside temperature of minus 20 Fahrenheit with a light maintenance fire burning in a rocket stove, the interior of a correctly built Alaskan round Quonset holds between 45 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. A standard log cabin of identical floor area, same outside temperature, same fire, averages between 28 and 35 degrees interior due to corner heat loss, thermal bridging at the ridge, single-pane window infiltration, and uninsulated floor slab perimeter. The Quonset is at 65. The cabin is at 30. That differential is not comfort. That is the clinical boundary between hypothermia and survival. That is the margin between waking up and search teams finding you in the morning. And not $1 of that advantage came from premium insulation products, engineered lumber, or professional installation. It came from shape, from layering, from the decision to build without corners, anchored to the earth, and seal the only opening in the structure with a door that was designed for exactly this purpose. If you are planning a cold climate build, these are the principles that cannot be negotiated away. Build round. The arch eliminates every thermal bridge before the first panel is placed. Anchor to old-growth root mass on your north side. Let geology and biology provide the wall you cannot afford to buy. Layer 5 deep on every exposed surface. Steel, air gap, debris pack, duff, interior board. Each layer compounds every other. Build the airlock vestibule first, before the stove, before the shelves, before the lighting. It returns more warmth per dollar invested than any other single element in this build. Keep the footprint between 14 and 16 feet in diameter. This is a thermal sweet spot where body heat, rocket stove output, and structural insulation reach equilibrium without waste. Use a rocket stove. Nothing available without grid power matches its fuel efficiency. Orient the door south. Passive solar gain through a south-facing vestibule adds 5 to 10 free degrees on any clear day regardless of air temperature. The man in this photograph is not extraordinary. He is not a trained survivalist or a military engineer. He is a builder who understood one thing that most people building in cold climates never learn. The structure itself is a heater. Everything else, the stove, the insulation, the door, supports a thermal system that begins with the arch and ends with the sealed entry. Get those two things right, and the cold becomes a condition you are watching from inside a warm room, rather than a force you are fighting with your life. No permits, no contractors, no $80,000 prefabricated cabin kit, corrugated steel, forest debris, a salvage refrigerator door, and the knowledge that the ground 4 feet below your floor is warmer than the air above the trees. And has been every day for 10,000 years. Drop a comment right now if you want the complete materials list, the exact rocket stove build dimensions, the debris pack layering specifications, and the full airlock vestibule measurements. Every number, every material, every step from bare ground to 65 degrees. Like this video. Subscribe. Hit the bell without hesitation. Because out here, the difference between what you know and what you don't is measured in degrees. And degrees are measured in lives. Stay warm. Build smart.